Hi, I'm Jason from Endless Wave Dynamics, where every week I'll be on the front line of your creative business battles. Now today I'm interviewing my good buddy Richard Middleton of socialartist.co.uk. Richard is a social dynamics coach helping people build stronger connections with others. We're really close friends and he's been a great support in helping me out with Endless Wave Dynamics. We both coach clients together on quite a few occasions, as well as run a few focus and mastermind groups on this kind of content. He's someone that I regularly bounce ideas off, and I can put my trust behind his work, and I know you can too. After recently selling his sound and staging business, he's now committed to helping people that are struggling with social anxiety and their social confidence. So I've got him on the show today to talk about how people are not necessarily born with these kind of social skills. They learn them. And you can develop yours to be a charismatic, confident and charming person that will make the difference in your creative business. We're also going to be talking about making new friends and bridging gaps of old friendships by finding common interests and building rapport. Our fears are usually founded in irrational thinking. What we think is going to happen in a conversation is not usually the case. We're also going to go over one of Richard's great tricks for approaching new people, and that's having talks with your future selves and letting them do all the hard work. And I know that sounds bizarre, but trust me, you'll see in the show it totally works. And then we're going to go over how to apply the 80-20 principle to your social life and treat it like a workout so you're always in the mood for chatting. And finally, pushing past your comfort zones and taking more risks. All this in a 20-minute episode packed tight with applicable stuff to get into while you're improving your creativity. Enjoy this one with Richard Middleton. I'm Jason from Endless Wave Dynamics. I'm here with my good buddy Richard Middleton. So a little bit about yourself, Richard.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I am a social coach. It's probably the best way to explain it. So I help people meet people and connect with people and how to have good connections and conversations with people. Kind of make friends with all types of people from whatever walks of life, really.
Okay. Reason kind of why I wanted you on the podcast is because you've actually worked in the music industry like I have, and you've been out touring with bands, working in the industry, and then you've also seen how much having decent social skills affects your level of success while you're out there on the road. You're teaching this now as well, you're teaching the social skills, and you're also creating your own content as well. I'm just wondering, what are the things that you see that makes the difference between somebody that gets it and somebody that doesn't get it?
Okay, so first thing is we're not all born as sort of natural, charismatic people who connect with people and a generous social. You're not born with it. You don't come out of the room high-fiving the nurses and kind of...
You probably did.
I probably did. There isn't footage from that time, so we don't know. But yeah, so it's something that is learned, and I think it's easy to learn that when you're at school, for sure. And I think this is kind of why you get to this point in life when maybe you've moved around, so you've probably been to university or you've moved a city, so you're in a new place, and as an adult you find it a lot more difficult to meet people and connect with people because you're not in that social situation really. I
totally see what you mean about when say you're at college or university, you're a little bit younger, it's a lot easier to be social. It's a lot easier to form new friend groups. And then say if you work in a job somewhere and then you have to move somewhere else, then suddenly you're isolated and you've not got that same ability or leverage around you to actually meet new people, and it can be difficult. So where do you even start with these kind of things?
Yeah, I think where I'd start with this thing is kind of making your old connections count. So I think as you get older, you do say that you have less friends as you get older, and I think that's because you're not maintaining the relationships that you do have.
You eventually lose touch with people, right? And people are busy lives, and they fall out of touch. So you rebridge those gaps.
Yeah, rebridge those gaps, which is kind of getting easier with things like Facebook now. Even though it's kind of Facebook's one of these double-edged swords, it is making people withdraw from society is kind of physically meeting
Hide
people.
behind like a mask, right? It's a digital mask.
Yeah, but it does mean that you keep somewhat connected
Hello,
to...
Clarice.
It does mean you keep somewhat connected with people who are acquaintances. So reconnecting with those people. And I remember being at college, because I studied music at college, and that's the kind of career I went into after college. And I remember even just being in bands, how much easier it was. You know, even just getting a rehearsal or getting gigs, because, you know, you don't have a busy life. You know, you don't have jobs, you don't have responsibilities as sort of a teenager at school and university. And I've known from trying to start bands in my 20s, it's just the amount of phone calls and texts trying to say, hey, when are you free to do this? Are you free to do this gig on the 16th? And it just becomes a whole lot more difficult as an adult to have that sort of social life where everyone is kind of on the same page as well.
So bridging gaps with old friends, what about new friends? What about making new friends? Because most people don't make that many new friends in their life. So, like, what about putting yourself in positions where you can make new friends, and that can also work for your creative business out there? So, like, there's going to be people in your life that make a difference to how your career develops. And you can't have a business and only do it yourself. You need to actually, to get money, you need to be able to communicate with other people. So what about putting other people in your life?
Yeah, so this is coming from, so a little bit more background about me. I was a sound engineer for 10 years. I worked on most of the festivals in the UK, toured and things like that. But a lot of my work was maintaining sound systems in bars and things like that. And working as a self-employed person without any co-workers is kind of one of the more lonely environments where you don't really have connections with people. So you'll be working, you come home and you kind of just want to relax. So as to making new friends, the reasons we levitate towards people is because we have stuff in common with them, generally speaking. So great ways to find people you have in common with is things like meetup groups. So meetup.com is great, Facebook groups. So you've kind of got to work it out. What is your hobby? So this is kind of where it can relate to what you maybe do as a career, what you want to do as a career, or your passion, whether it be music, photography, anything like that. So you'll find countless groups on the internet dedicated to maybe, midnight photography, or gig goers London, gig goers Leeds, whatever. So it's kind of to take that step, and that is the first place I'd really start, is to build connections with people with similar interests through groups like that, for sure.
So earlier on you mentioned that it's not necessarily a natural thing, but yet it's a common place for people to look at other people and then be like, oh, that's not me. They were born like that. They were naturally born like that. They can do that. I can't do that. What about getting there in the first place? I mean, there's a lot of approach anxiety that goes into meeting a new person, or even re-bridging old gaps. You got there's some kind of fear that maybe an old friend is not going to react in the same way. We often put limitations on ourselves by thinking that a certain situation is going to react in a certain way, and it's not necessarily like that, or they might actually be totally welcoming. So how do we get over that first stage?
Yeah, so approach anxiety is kind of what I kind of deal with a lot in what I do now, and it's basically more a fear of meeting new people, and more so worrying how they'll perceive you. So you've got to understand that fear happens in the future. It never happens, in this moment, because in this moment right now is kind of the only thing that matters. So there's a few mindsets you can have to overcome that. So you can imagine talking to your future self. So your future self is you, but it's in, 5 minutes time. Okay,
I like this.
It's in 5 minutes time. And so you speak to your future self and you say, hey, future self, I want to go and talk to, maybe you want to go talk to the promoter. And maybe you're just not the guy who deals with that in your band, because you've always got that one guy who kind of does all that stuff. Yeah. And maybe you just kind of want to be a bit more like that. Yeah. So if you talk to your future self and say, look, I want to go talk to this guy, and get your future self to say to you, look, I'm going to take care of this for you. All I need you to do is walk over there, and that's all you need to do. So you're only responsible now for actually walking there, and your future self will take over, because a lot of times your fear is kind of unfounded. Yeah. You're talking to people. You know you can talk to people.
Yeah. You talk to your family, just normal. You talk to your best friend, just normal. But yet, sometimes when you try to talk to someone completely new, something happens. It's like, this wall goes up and you just start talking like a special person.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you kind of, you're always thinking, oh, what if it goes bad? You know, this happened to me once. It's like the amount of times you've just had great conversations with people, it's kind of, you totally put those back in your mind, you know what I mean? So it's kind of just making a deal with your future self, who's the guy who, like, he's the social guy, and, you know, that's the guy you want to be. And he's going to take care of the rest. Another one to have, these are my big two mindsets, is to think to yourself, right, if I don't go talk to that person, or, you know, you might want to go talk to the other band, whatever. If I don't go talk to that person, will that feeling of, oh, we could have really hit it off and had a good connection, we could have been like touring buddies, whatever, the feeling of what you could have got out of that, is the feeling of regret worse than the feeling of, what if they just kind of just like, ugh, you know? And the feeling of regret is far worse than the feeling of them rejecting you.
Yeah, going away knowing that you could have done something about any situation, but you've not acted upon it, is way worse than the actual outcome of going and trying it in the first place. You mentioned that there's always one person in say, a band that does all this kind of thing, and then the rest of the band doesn't do that. Or it can be the same in any kind of creative group of people working towards something. There's always one person that's taking the reins. My personal thoughts on this is that if you had a band full of people doing that, you get, say, 4 or 5 times there quicker. You know, if you're all out there socializing, making the difference, you're going to be known for something pretty special, and people are going to want to work with you.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where I don't think anyone ever looks at someone and goes, God, check him out. He's so charismatic and he's so social. What a douchebag. It's not a bad thing to be social, you know? And I say that I've been in bands where I was the guy who was always talking to the promoter and talking to the sound engineer. I was the guy sending emails and for like gigs and stuff like that. So I know what it is like to kind of be the guy who organises stuff. Sure. And, you know, in a way you kind of become that guy who almost has a vision, and you kind of feel like everyone else is relying on you.
Yeah, sure.
But for sure, I'd love someone to come up to me and go, look, man, I'm just going to take the gigs off your hands. I'll do the booking of the gigs. I'll do the booking of the band practices. So, you know, if you came up to whoever in your band and you kind of said, look, mate, you fucking do a lot. I'm going to book the practices first. So you're there phoning up the rehearsal room and booking in the rehearsal room, and when you get there, you're the guy who pays at the end and just has a bit of talking with the rehearsal room guy. You know, little things like that, they're going to remember who you are. You know, and that only has benefits further down the line, sure.
And this is like certainly evident, like if you're working with someone, when you're employed by someone, and your boss, like, say he promotes somebody else that's less skilled than you, that's got that little bit more social ability, and you're left wondering, well, why did he get the job? But that's just because you're not necessarily working on that other side, that social ability. And it's the same when you're self-employed and you lose a job to someone, say, that's actually hanging out with the band's lots and communicating authentically with the band on a friend-to-friend level. They are more likely to get the job rather than someone that's not doing those kind of things.
80% of being great at your job is being able to communicate effectively.
Sure.
So there was, I'm pretty sure it's Dale Carnegie, but he was talking about somebody else, about this guy who went on to be kind of the boss of a lot of big businesses, sure. And he didn't know anything. He knew 20% of his knowledge. Everyone else in the company knew how to, you know, it might have been how to polystyrene wrap a mould around a sheet metal or something like that.
Yeah.
He didn't know this. But what he was an effective communicator.
Sure.
And going back to bringing this back to kind of tying in with what we're talking about is connecting with the right type of people. You know, whether you're a promoter, if you're getting on really well with the promoter and you're asking the right questions and you're just having that connection with the promoter, he's going to have you in mind for the
next
big
job.
band who comes in who needs a support band. You know, you're going to get off that 5-band bill with all the local guys you've played a million times with. You might be friends with, you might not, but you're going to be on that national band that's touring.
Yeah, I've often talked to promoters about this very same thing, that most promoters are put on a shit band who they're really good friends with, but they'd hesitate at putting on a really good band that they absolutely can't stand, and it's a very similar thing. But then how do we start to communicate authentically with people? How can we not have it sound forced or contrived? How can we make this seem really natural?
Okay, so there's a few things. Probably the biggest thing when sort of like meeting people and connecting with people is you don't really want to be talking about yourself. Like,
sure.
Because everyone's favourite subject is themselves.
Yeah.
So if you're bearing that in mind, when I'm talking to someone, and this is kind of a genuine thing as well, where I kind of want to know about people.
Yeah.
I know about myself.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, where, you know, you're always finding out new things about yourself. But I'm going to go say, hi, what's your name? Especially for sound engineers, the amount of time someone asks me my name, I've been doing it 10 years.
Once?
Probably, I can probably count them on one hand. But you're going to do a better job for those guys. The guys who come and ask you how you are is kind of one of those big things. The littlest things like, how are you doing today, mate? How's it been? Is it going good today? You know, get to know them a little bit. Are you local? Are you from around here? Even the most almost phatic speech questions. What's your name? How are you? Are you local? That's better than thinking, I've got nothing to say to him.
Sure.
I'd rather someone, when you start meeting and connecting with people, I'd rather somebody staying there in a conversation by asking the most
mundane rubbish,
mundane questions than going, I had nothing to say because I didn't want to ask them the usual questions. So, well, your result is that you talk to them for like 10 seconds. Yeah.
You talked to them for ages on Facebook, but then when you got to the gig, you talked to them for 10 seconds, and that people would walk away from that not wanting to work with you again.
Yeah. And I think as well, you might find out just by that little bit of chat, you'd be like, oh yeah, we played with that band. Then you know the same people. So then you have that bond through mutual connections and mutual people, which is really, really cool. And even saying, like, try to spread it out a bit more, like, for photographers, if you're into maybe photographing gigs and stuff like that, just be willing to make those connections and willing to send those messages saying, hey man, how you doing, blah blah blah.
So it's building rapport.
Yeah, you're making connections, and that's another one of the big things at the beginning is kind of having the balls to do it. You know, because if you haven't got the balls to do it in the first place, none of the other stuff about what to say and none of that matters because you haven't had the balls in the first place.
So, like, earlier on you mentioned that you're interested in people genuinely. I'm really intrigued by this idea that it's a muscle. It's like working out. I think, like, there's lots of times when creatives are sat in an office, in a studio, in a room, and they're just doing the focus on the job and the work, and then eventually, like, they have to come out of that shell, and then it's almost like that very same fear sets in again. You can't let the fear stop you from practicing it. You just still got to walk into that situation and do it, and then put your trust in the process to make that happen and things still follow suit.
Yeah. I think it's you'll never forget how to drive, but if you've not done it for a while, you'll be rusty. You know, and you'll definitely, like, approach anxiety is one of those things where, even for me, if I've been working at the moment, I've been working on books, I've been kind of just sat in my room or in the coffee shop doing work, and if I was to go just approach random people now, I'm going to feel that bit of nerves, and you know, I've got the proof backing it up, so I know that it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're still going to feel it if you haven't been there for a while. But
what about the people that have not got the proof? Should they let that first one put them off? I mean,
there's a couple of ways to deal with it. You can either sort of jump in the deep end, and that can be quite scary for some people. You know, so even though it kind of almost breaks them out of the reality that, oh, you can actually talk to random strangers. It's fine. Another way to do it is kind of go about it now in your day-to-day lives. So you might have to go to the coffee shop. So you might just order your coffee, and that's kind of it. Or can I just have a mocha chocolate or whatever it is, you know? Give them money and that's it. So like I said, ask them about themselves. How's your day going?
Yeah.
What time do you finish? Yeah. You know,
have a laugh and joke with the person behind the till. Yeah,
and the little bits of things, like you don't have to start approaching people like you wouldn't, like totally random strangers in the street. You don't have to do that. It's like the little things that you can add to your life already. You know, the train conductor.
Yeah.
You know, you can add little bits of stuff to sort of build your level. And like I was saying, even when I was writing, I tend to go a lot out to coffee shops a lot, mainly because just to have that connection with people and not be totally locked away from them, you know. So that's always good to try and add little things to your life that are a bit more social. So almost pushing yourself a little bit further every day to do stuff rather than jumping in and sort of scaring yourself.
That's amazing. So I often ask, if you could tell yourself something for like 10 years ago that would make a difference, what would you tell your past self that would have saved some money or some time with all this social learning?
Probably not so much money, but definitely time is to take more risks, you know, be bolder, not be afraid to dream. Especially when you're younger, you kind of...
Is it when you're just younger? I mean, a lot of older people just don't take risks, especially once they get into the habit.
But I mean, you're allowed to dream when you're younger. I wish someone had said to me, look, be crazy, do what you want. You know, you're young. You can make mistakes, you know, and especially when you get older, maybe you want to have that responsibility and you want to have that family and stuff. But you kind of almost led to believe that you have to kind of start taking a bit of responsibility. It's like, no, just have a dream and kind of live big and just, if you're going to go do it, if you're going to do whatever, if you're going to be in a band, if you're going to be a photographer, a videographer, a blogger, anything, if you're going to do it, fucking do it.
Dream big and do it.
Yeah, don't do it half-assed and just go and do it. Well, you know, because you're allowed to make those mistakes when you're young, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I think you're allowed to make those mistakes at any point, but...
yeah, I'm still making them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much, Richard, for your time. It's been an amazing chat.
Yeah.
Cool. So where can people get you?
So my website is socialartist.co.uk. So there's links on there for my YouTube and my Facebook, and should maybe my blog on my book on there very shortly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. Thanks very much. See you later.
Wow, there's a lot there, right? Since selling his business, Richard has been living and breathing this material, going out and coaching in different countries where obviously there's a language barrier. But it proves when you're communicating, words are not the most important thing. Now, I still really like that conversations with your future self part. It really eliminates stress of putting one foot in front of the other and breaking out of your introverted shell. I also love how he eases his clients in with small steps to build up levels of abundance and positive references that can then be used to prove that making great relationships and bonds with just about anyone is possible. And you don't even have to be born that way either. Richard's proved that here, that you can learn that. Show your support and subscribe in YouTube or in iTunes. I make this content to help creative people in the areas that I've struggled the most in my career. So if you feel like you're struggling with yours, or you feel like you've overcome a huge hurdle in your productive performance, then guess what? I'd love to hear about it. So get in touch, like me on Facebook, let's have a chat about how we can bring out the best creative in you and in others. Cheers. Bye.